Hey there! Welcome to the first Geek Initiative YouTube video. I am Tara. I am the senior editor of the site, and you guys can look forward to a lot more awesome content here on the Geek Initiative YouTube channel. I will be talking about Thor every Thursday because Thor is awesome, Thor is amazing, and I love the character in all his or her appearances. So, let's go ahead and get right into a controversial topic that people are still debating about the most recent version of Thor, who is, of course, female. And there are going to be a few spoilers in here, so if you haven't read it or don't want to know about who Thor really is, then I'm sorry, please tune out, but come back when you've read it or when you've learned about it, and please hear what I have to say. And my main point with this whole video is asking people to respect each other regarding what kind of media they like. And this move is so controversial, and it's just got a lot of hate. It's constantly brought up every single time there's a discussion about female characters in comics. Like, people are still so sore about it that they're like, you know, you could be talking about a character who has been traditionally the same for a while, like Storm, and people are still just going to be like, ugh, another conversation about female characters. Because, really, Thor as a woman isn't that enough, and it's like, you get into these conversations, not even with trolls, but just, you know, people that you know, and the lack of understanding for why I'm passionate about this character in all incarnations is something that really bothers me, because it's not even that you disagree with me. Like, feel free to disagree with me, especially if you've been reading Thor comics for a lot longer than I have. But please just respect that I like the story. Like, why are you going to discourage people from reading awesome comics just because you don't happen to like that particular story or that particular arc? Now, like I said, I like Thor in various incarnations. I will not be ashamed to admit that MCU Thor is the best. MCU Thor is my favorite Thor. Chris Hemsworth is an amazing actor. He's rather good looking. He's extremely talented. I'm totally into that Thor, okay? But what I'm asking others to respect is my love for the story. I love that character, and there's a very big difference between being a huge fan and loving a character, and then finally see a character that you value so much represent you. And, for those who know who the character is, to find out that it was the Thor's true identity in this arc is actually a character that you had loved and admired for so long. That's a huge thing. You know, being able to see that value in a character you love is awesome. And being able to love a character with that much strength and then see it in yourself, I mean, you pretty much see Jane go through that. Or at least you can go back and piece together how she goes through that process, and how really it isn't about him, it's about her, and about what she needs to do. But as a reader, seeing a character that you love and admire, and then seeing that pass on to a character who actually represents you is just phenomenal. I mean, it really changed the way that I kind of see myself as a fan and see myself being represented. And I'm not asking you for you to agree with all these story changes. I'm just saying, please respect that I like the story, and that it speaks to me, and that if you read the back of these issues, I'm not the only one that it speaks to. That's all I'm asking for. Now, feminism became really overt in the series. I think because it had to. Because some people complained so much and so obnoxiously that it had to be addressed. You know, to fail to address that in the story itself, I think would have let me down a little bit. And to see that being done makes me feel like I don't have to keep second guessing myself. Am I allowed to be in this fandom? Do I belong here? Do people like me belong here? Because I almost feel like the answer to that, specifically from Jason Aaron, was like, I get you. You're taking a lot of heat for this. So am I. So I'm going to give you a message that says, you do belong here. This is what the story is saying. And if it isn't clear after this particular encounter in the comic, then I don't know what I can do to explain it to you, because it's pretty well laid out there. And I think that's pretty much what, like, I was obviously already sold on the comic by, like, issue, I think it was 6 or so when that happened, but that really just kind of hooked me in for good, you know, and reading all those letters in the back and seeing the different perspectives also I found really encouraging and related to them. And seeing Marvel actively defend the decision was also really fantastic. And so, I mean, that brings me to another point about, you know, who owns this. It's for the fans, but we don't own the characters. We don't love, I don't think any one person loves every single thing that Marvel does. I'm a huge Marvel fan. I love them, but I'm not in love with everything. Like, you know, I think the Thor movie is fantastic. I think the Daredevil TV show is okay. You know, I think Agent Carter is amazing. I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s pretty good. You know, and so on with the comics. Like, some stories are more gripping than others, and not every story is meant for you. Sometimes, you know, that story might appeal more to another fan, and you don't have to take that personally. It's not somebody trying to insult you, it's just, you know, somebody trying to maybe appeal to another fan or another type of fan, and that's okay. Because, you know, maybe Thor will be different in the future, and it won't really be the type of Thor that I relate to. I don't really relate to Ultimate's Thor a lot. You know, I still read it. It was alright. Not my favorite. But I bet there's someone out there that's like, I love Ultimate's Thor. Well, good for you. There's a story for you, and, you know, I could talk about why I don't like it, but that doesn't mean I don't like you, or that you shouldn't hold that opinion, or I'm going to try and change your mind. And there's a lot going on the internet now about, you know, well, that's just not how it should be, or you're trying to police my thoughts or censor me because this change happened. And really, I feel like people have no idea what censorship really even is, or, you know, like what true artistic oppression really is. And there's a huge difference between someone expressing an opinion and feeling like, oh my gosh, there's finally a community out there that's going to support me, because, like, Marvel totally actually defended the existence of this character on Twitter, and I agree with them, and somebody being like, your opinion's completely wrong and invalid. Like, don't do that to people. Some people are going to have a different opinion, you know, like, you can debate civilly, that's fine. You know, it's also about dealing with change. I mean, I work in the tech industry, so dealing with change is kind of a huge part of the job. You know, I've been in digital publishing for a while. I've seen my jobs outsourced. I've had to kind of pull together work and freelance to make ends meet, and, you know, I've had the full-time, stable, steady position, and fortunately that's where I am now, and I really like it, but even in that, like, it's a constant state of change. And you have to understand that media and digital media, and with how quickly everything changes, and how audiences change, and how different fans are really coming to their own, that's going to affect the content that we see. And if you can learn to at least cope with the changes, then you'll just do a lot better in life. At least that's what I've learned. You know, choose your battles, really. And the last thing I want to say is something that that a friend just reminded me of recently, and that's shout out to Scott for mentioning this. He's an artist, very gifted artist. He told me that it's kind of something to worry about when people say, this art makes me feel uncomfortable, and therefore you shouldn't be in my group. And I think specifically with comics and movies as well, that can be taken on so many levels, because you can see that as, Thor represented as a female makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't respect your opinion because it's different than mine. Get out of my fandom. It's been the same way for decades. Who are you to have the right and come in and say that you like this? There's that, and, there's another version of it, which is, hey, this is a general community. I feel that your drawings objectify women. You have no place drawing art. You have no right to post that or to like it, etc. It's one thing if it's a small private community focused on a feminist matter. It's another thing if it's a general community, and you're discussing and debating. Like, discuss and debate, but to say you have no right to do this, that's, where I agree it gets scary. And yes, there is a need for safe and inclusive spaces. The conversations that go on in closed groups for women versus general groups are extremely different. And that's okay. I like being a part of both of those groups. I like hearing the thoughts of people who aren't like me and who don't think like me, but I also like being able to talk about, or to talk with people in a safer space where I feel like some of my ideas aren't just going to be laughed at, or where I'm not just going to be looked at like I'm crazy for asking for help or for existing. Because in some of these communities, if you exist and they know you're female, you're like already in for it, and then if you say you like, I love Thor, then it's a whole nother thing, and they're like, oh, of course you do, and there goes the disrespect. And I think the majority of fans are respectful, and I understand what it's like to feel so passionately about a character, because I feel passionately about this character, again, in all incarnations. But I just hope that fans can learn to respect each other more, and to say, like my friend Isabel said to me, I get where you're coming from. I don't feel like it's a good change, but, I respect that you're passionate about the character, and I feel the same way, towards her. And if only more people could kind of have that attitude towards each other, I think it would help the community. It wouldn't be a forced inclusion. It would just be a mutual respect. That's all I'm asking for. So I'm signing off for this particular Thorsday segment for the Geek Initiative, and I hope to see you next Thursday.